So the first thing we will do, obviously, again, um, we are going to summarize a little bit what we've done, what we have discussed last week. We were talking about social context or social classes, and we had this image, this uh, diamond shaped object. And as you can see, education, the first one would be education, the second one, occupation and income. And when you uh, are able to measure education, occupation, income, you would call them socioeconomic status. And um, in the next um, semester, we will study methods and techniques, research techniques, and there we will mention that sorry guys, and there you will see that education, occupation, income, we will have to measure these. And it's very important that we discuss these issues here because we said, if well, it's important to be able to understand as a political scientist the socio-economic status of individuals and groups within a state, within a society. Sorry about that, guys. So, and we said, a person could have low education, it could have higher education, it could have um, a professional occupation or unskilled occupation. If we talk about the extremes of social classes, you could have a high income, an individual could have a very high income or be poor. And all these add up to upper middle, working, or underclass. And this is going to be of major importance for your understanding of society in relationship to politics and international relations. And if you're going to study international relations, you will realize that the social classes, the socio-economic status of individuals are related to what we call the domestic context, the domestic politics or domestic economics, domestic social context within a state. And this is going to be turn out to be majorly important for how a country or a government, and this is something that we will be talking about today, how a government makes policy internally within the state and externally in terms of foreign policy. Um, So we define social class to consist of people in a community. A community is what we call a social context who are somewhat similar in their economic status. So we said economic status is occupation, income, and education. So in those from those dimensions, economic status and they resemble each other. They are similar. Their attitudes, so how they behave, the conduct and belief systems. You could think of norms and values, their educational attainments. Higher education, lower education. There tends to be a trend of people living together in communities that resemble each other, that are similar. So, in the way they live and in the way they influence community affairs. Therefore, a social class could be considered as a subculture. People whose social statuses are similar. So it could be because of the fact that people live together in the same neighborhoods, they're associated largely with one another, they marry each other, likely to show similarities of speech, manners, moral standards. This is something we discussed last week. We've also discussed about stratification, coming from strata, also called categories or layers within a society. And this could be associated with something of superiority or inferiority relationships constructed within these stratas or layers within a social context. And we made a metaphor, an analogy actually, of a cake. The upper thin layer consisting of highest economic and social status, and then many other layers within a cake, referring to economic and social status being mediocre or middle class, and then the bottom layer, whose economic and social status would be so-called very low. But this metaphor also suggests that these layers are not very distinctly cut off. So there is always a transition from one layer to the other. And that brings us actually to the next topic, what we would call social mobility. And social mobility is the transfer or moving up or down these layers. In a way, when you think philosophically, from a very ideological perspective, one could say that this class system or various layers within a society are not very consistent with the ideals of democracy. And democracy actually is arguing for equal opportunities, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or equal distribution of income. So how do we go about this question? And this is a very big debate, big discussion for you as a political scientist. How do we go about these unequal inequality or unequal distribution of resources? And that this is when the government comes into the scene, making policy, making sure that all individuals are treated equal, have equal opportunities, have the opportunity for education, housing, employment, and a future ahead, being motivated and obviously being happy, self-realization, as we've seen in the pyramid of Maslow. And the problem usually is, how do you as an individual move up or down? I mean, would this be possible? I mean, from a democratic, in a modern society such as Turkey, it would be obviously possible to move up or down. And this is being a student, this is being a scholar, this is being a doctor, architect, engineer. People have these opportunities from an ideal perspective. Whether that is the case is always open for discussion, academic discussion or political discussion, or media, public discussion, etc. So it brings us to the problem, and it is a problem to think there are lower classes and children coming into these lower classes who do not have the same opportunities, and that's a problem, as opposed to the upper class, whatever that might mean. I mean, it could be different in another society, and it could be something else in another society. But from a general perspective, lower classes, upper classes, we have seen the academic approach, socioeconomic differences or similarities. But the problem cannot be avoided. It's not enough to say low class, high class. It's not enough. I mean, it doesn't present a solution for that problem. So there is no escaping, and there must be a debate. There must be a discussion. People are economically and socially better off than some other people. Is the case? I mean, yes, but how do we go about? I mean, if you as students of political sciences today go into politics tomorrow, I mean, how would you address these questions, right? So you have the people and you have politics. How would you solve the problem? Would it be solvable? I mean, democracy says there must be equal distribution of opportunities. Equal distribution of opportunities, but how do you do that? So the situation for many people was the thought and the possibilities of moving up. So people believe in modern societies, in higher civilizations, that they can move up, right? By studying, by increasing your degree level of education, by obtaining a good job as a professional, and obviously these would add up to higher socio-economic position status. Or you could be an entrepreneur earning millions, or become a very successful enterprise, not only national but also international, and move up wealth wise, money wise, and on the social ladder. um, well, I must admit, it's not about moving up a social ladder. It's obviously um, personal development, personal employment, um, and personal growth, happiness. That should be central in this discussion. But 50 years ago, there's a period, long period, that people were not able to move up. And then there is a period that it is possible to move up. And today, as we speak, one of the biggest discussions is the biggest debates is that that there is a problem, and rich people are getting richer and poor people are getting poorer. And this is what Bernie Sanders was talking about, that maybe 1% of the United States own 80% of the wealth in the United States, and only maybe the 20, 25% of, or maybe 60, 70% of the United States earn 2.5% or 3% of the income of the wealth. And that's very, very unequal. And this is a big debate, guys. So this is the future, our future. Um, would it help if you work hard? Would it help if you obtain a higher degree? Would it help you to move up into a better position in society if you would have a better education, if you would work hard, etc.? So this is a big debate. This is a big discussion, because there is obvious inequalities within societies around the whole world, and people are unhappy about this. Look at what happens. It's a big discussion between blacks and whites in the United States, in terms of income, education, distribution, housing, employment. A big portion of 30% of names that do not sound white are rejected prior to job interviews, and black people cannot get housing. They cannot buy houses or get jobs or enjoy the possibilities, opportunities. So you see that with Black Lives Matter. And just yesterday, a black person was shot again in the United States. So this keeps on coming back, and it will keep on coming back, this discussion and debate, as long as the world population is increasing. And we have talked about this during the course as well. As long as there are limited, finite resources on the world, on the globe, it is going to be a problem to distribute equally for all individuals. So is it something for the individual? Is it something that the individual should take care for himself, or is it also about the government, or is it both? So in a way, it's not easy. It's not one solution, but it's a complex solution, since every state, every nation is also culturally different, economically different, geographically different, and there is a very wide variety of given natural resources, as well as governments that can profit from these resources and are able to divide and distribute over their own populations. So this inequality question is something for your generation, and you will have to think of this debate, whether you like it or not. and it is getting crowded. So again, on this slide, we see Bernie Sanders received in 2016 primaries a big success because he put this social mobility issue on the agenda. And it is a political and social unstable situation. It creates this inequality. Since democracy is about equality, this inequality is going to be problematic for politics, economy, and social stability. So we also talked about are there traits? Would you be able to say that if you belong to one race, you would be more successful? If you belong to one gender, you would be more or less successful? And we have seen that there are maybe two things that we could pick out. One of them is deferred gratification. Deferred gratification means you've probably seen those YouTube videos of children. They receive a sweet, a candy on a table, and the father or the mother says, "Don't eat it." And the child wants to take and eat it. But there are children who wait before taking. They can wait maybe a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and that's deferring your gratification. It means not satisfying the need, the want. You want to take it and eat it, but you can wait before eating it. And if you can do that, if you can delay your gratification, science, this is science, social sciences says those people who can delay their pleasures, their gratifications, are more patient. There is a big chance that they can be successful. So this is one point. This is it's debatable, but this is one finding about deferred gratification. But there is also something of psychology, beliefs, and beliefs are transmitted from your parents through continually supportive feedback. Imagine you live in a family of 10 children. It would be very difficult for the parents to be involved in the education or psychological support of every single child. But imagine that you come from a family of 2 children. The chances are bigger that the parents were able to be involved in your life, right? Or maybe if your parents are higher educated, they would make programs for you especially. So there is also this science of thinking that one child families are more successful. So for children who come from families with one child or 2 children, have a bigger chance of moving upwards and making something of their lives. They'd be more motivated. But is it enough? Is this beliefs or deferred gratification? Is this enough? No. It certainly has a point. Those who are patient, those who have belief system that they can become, that they can do it, that they can achieve their goals and objectives in life. Yes, but there are also other points to be taken into consideration. So we also talked about and we also talked about this social mobility. And social mobility could be by migration. By migrating in your own. Migration is in your own country. So you go from Istanbul to Ankara. That's migration. If you immigrate, you go from Turkey to America, for example, to another country. So migration is one way of social mobility. Immigration is another way of mobility. And today, there are social changes as there were during the 18th century because of the industrialization that people moved from villages to the town to cities to work in factories for higher wages. And the same thing is happening right now. There is immigration, there is migration and immigration. Because, for example, Western countries have higher pay, and they would prefer a job that pays more than a job that pays less in their own country. maybe in their own village. And that means social change. Social change means changing the old order. And it's not going to be easy because the old order is maintained partially by existing economy and existing politics. And that would suggest change in economic terms and social terms or political terms. And that could be problematic depending on the type of government. So if the government is democratic, a change could be easy. But if the type of government is undemocratic, it could be problematic. It could mean revolution. It could mean civil war. It could mean problems, social problems from a social perspective, connected to economy, connected to politics. Okay. So, but as I was saying in the slide before, there was this one study. What happens if we so is the solution for equal opportunity, giving everyone an income. Susan Mayer, who conducted a research, says no. So even if we double the money that a family gets, even if we give them more money, income, the prospect for that child to be successful is not realistic, because it's not only an issue of income for the child. For the child, intelligence, vision, what do you want? What do I want to become? Determination, that you're determined, that you have the self-confidence that you want to achieve in life. Determination is important. Health is important. Partly you can buy health if you have money. If you have money, you can go to better hospitals. You can buy health. Money doesn't make people happy, but money can buy things when you need things, right? So money is just one partial. It's just one part of the whole equation. Money doesn't make happy, but it's an instrument, right? It's just an instrument, and it could improve the quality of life in terms of education, in terms of health. But if the child doesn't want to, it doesn't happen. So the child must want to, and there should be this internal belief, conditioning, socialization of making something out of your life, having good health and willingness, commitment to the cause, and, for example, willingness to cooperate with other people. These are better indicators, better predictors for advancement. So it's not always, because I know a lot of examples of people who come from poverty, from big families, 8 children, 9 children, and that the child, even though there was a lot of poverty, has become very, very successful. So it's also about the person who wants to make it in life, right? For example, in the Netherlands, I usually see the Netherlands is a country where you have a lot of soft drugs and you have a lot of alcohol. And I see youth, young people who cannot cope with problems of life, and they go and party. They take drugs every day. They drink alcohol every day, and this is for the future of society something to deal with. So the government makes a policy to inhibit the usage of drugs, the usage of alcohol in the Netherlands. So there are age restrictions, but there are also other policies to prevent the health of the younger generations. Having discussed these, poverty in terms of inequality is also a big problem. And this is, for example, in the United States. So you see that 5% or 6% of whites have been constantly poor since 2008 until 2014. And this total average of 14% and compared to blacks and Hispanics has been more than 20% on the population, throughout the whole population. So the blacks and the Hispanics, those are the biggest minorities in the United States, are the poorest. And this could also be said in Western Europe, the Netherlands, Germany, England. It would be the minorities, especially the Muslim minorities, who would have a bigger average of poverty and inequality within the society. So inequality is going to be, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, wealth, the situation is even more unequal today. The top 15% of the population controls 85% of the nation's wealth. The bottom 50% controls only 2.5%. So this is what we're talking about, inequality. So the median income, so when we take a look at that median income of the top 1% of high class, the upper class, has increased by 200% over the period. So this is huge. I mean, when you look at the rest of the people, the median income did not improve for the lower classes, for the people who work as in the factories or in the production system. But the top level, the median income has increased by 200%. I'm sorry. So that's problematic, and there you go. That's inequality, and this is going to be huge. And I want to give you something. I want to introduce you to a concept. You are going to enjoy this concept, this word. It's called structure. When we talk about structure, we use the term structure to describe the configuration of units. I will give an example. And then there is the word process. So you have structure. For political scientists, we usually talk about structure. We talk about process to capture some ideas. And when we say structure, think of a poker game, okay? And when you talk about structure in a poker game, this is the distribution of power or distribution of chips. So if chips are like money, so if I have more money in a poker game, I have maybe 1,000 euros, and you only have 50 euros. Who's going to take more chances? Who's going to take more risks? Obviously, it is going to be me because I am structurally stronger. So that's what we mean by structure. Structure is the distribution of power. And power could be military force, it could be money, it could be economic, it could be social, it could be historical. But it's how much do I have, how much do you have? That's structure, right? And structure is going to be important for you as a political scientist because Kenneth Waltz, it talks about structure. Liberalism talks about structure. Communism talks about structure, superstructures. So structure is how is money distributed. So again, in a poker game, if I have 1,000 euros and you only have 50 euros, I will take more chances, right? And you won't take chances because you could lose 50 euros in a beat, in a second. Process is how do we play the game? What are the rules of this game? Okay, so remember structure and process. That's the difference between structure versus process. So structure is distribution of power. Process is the interaction between you and me. So the interaction is decided by the rules of the game, right? Okay, so if you want to tackle poverty. So poverty, inequality, that's what we're talking about. If you want to analyze poverty, you want to understand and measure poverty, you have to think about the structure. So there is domestic structure and there is international structure, right? So when you talk about international structure, we're thinking about foreign policy. So what's the foreign policy of Turkey in terms of international structure? So how is the power relations, how is power distributed over Turkey and its neighbors or in the world? I mean, if you think of the Cold War, for example. So you had the United States and you had the Soviet Union, and power structure was distributed over bipolar countries, superpowers, right? Superstructures. So, but is a government going to solve the problem of poverty by policy structurally? Okay, so that this is the language. This is the language that you should use. Okay, so if there is global competition, international in the international economic structure, um, Dutch companies compete with Turkish companies, and people will work for the company that pays the most, right? But if a Turkish big company moves or the production line from Turkey to Africa or to Asia, what happens that people who work for that factory in Turkey will lose their jobs, right? And you will have a domestic structural problem because Africa would be cheaper to produce. So if you pay $10 in Turkey, you will probably pay $5 in Africa. So it's 50% cheaper. So outsourcing triggers more inequality, a distribution of power, or distribution of inequality in domestic terms. See, and new technologies make this possible. So the globalization, now we're working. For example, this new technology makes it possible for me to give a lecture from the Netherlands, right? And but while 10 years ago, the production lines, factories were moved, outsourced to Asia or Africa, and only the low-skilled people were hit hard by losing their jobs. Now, new technology also makes it difficult, for example, for my colleagues in Turkey to give lectures to you, right? So, for example, I can give lectures from the Netherlands because of technology. So, there is, you could say, competition between because of technology between me and my colleagues in Turkey. So another colleague in Turkey could give you the lecture, but that's how this competition, just as an example. Um, and so what do you need to tackle the structural problem? How do you redistribute? How do you do that? I mean, how do you tackle inequality? And one answer is by policy. And let me see. Okay, so and this is where government comes into. This is chapter 14 in Colander, the functions and forms of government. So we will be talking about the government, types of government, and what a government can do. And there are 5 points that a government can do. They can maintain internal order and external security. A government can ensure justice. A government can safeguard individual freedoms. A government can regulate businesses and individuals' actions. And a government can promote the general welfare. Okay, so if you want to tackle inequality as a politician, then there is a need for government, something of a government, right? A government can maintain internal domestic order, external security, because you, as an individual, as a citizen, need order to go to school. You need order in traffic. You need order, and you want to feel secure that you're not attacked from outside. So that's one function of government. Justice. If something happens, you go to a government organization. It could be judicial authorities, police, military, etc. And you could seek justice. A government has laws to ensure the individual freedoms, so you feel free to go to school, to go to work, to buy a house, and nobody will come and take your house away from you. So you feel freedom. They regulate business. So there is, you can do business, you can buy and sell. There is, for example, a banking system. You can put your money in a bank, and you can take individual actions, and you will be free. And then there will be policies for general welfare. So, from a theoretical point, these sounds great, but how often does it really happen? So that's what we will be talking about. So when we talk about maintaining internal order and external security, basic job um, of the government is to protect its citizens. So that's the most primary um, task of a government, to protect the citizen from internal and external enemies. I mean, this is very theoretical. This is political. Science is textbook information. The highest value, therefore, in every political society is self-preservation. Self-preservation means you can get a job, you can marry, you can have children, and you can preserve your way of life. And the government is the only agency equipped to protect a nation, because as a state, states accept, recognize another state's right to obtain a military, and only a state can use violence, controlled violence, if it is necessary. A person cannot do it, another group cannot do it, only a state can. And that's called sovereignty, right? So the use of force would be legitimate if there is a state, and the state has a government, and the government is legitimate. The legitimacy of a government comes from free elections, right? Or because the people, delegate the authority to rule to someone, or a government, a cabinet, a parliament, maybe. So a government alone possesses the power to enforce obedience to the rules of life. So this is big. I mean, what's the limit? How far may a government go to enforce obedience? I mean, can a government say you are going to do this, or you will be punished? I mean, so that part is also a big debate. I mean, how far can a government go in enforcing obedience, behavior of people, or thinking of people, and to ensure the future of a society, and therefore usage of military force and aggression. Okay, so and then we have, for example, something called anarchy. There are two terms: anarchy in a state. That means a society without government or law. But anarchy for international relations is something else. It means that there are states, there are many states in the international arena, and there is no there is beyond a state no other entity that can enforce obedience to states. So the state is the most ultimate entity, unit. And anarchy is not something bad in international relations. But anarchy within a government, within a state, means that there is no government or there is no law. Lawlessness would mean disorder. If there is no order for the citizen, I mean, the individuals would seek their justice or equality by themselves. This is the Thomas Hobbes nature of state discussion. So, according to Thomas Hobbes, in the nature of state, individuals who are the strongest, they will take away. If they're powerful enough, they will take your things or possessions or your family. They can take your life, etc. So there is no order. There is chaos. And Thomas Hobbes says that the human being is bad by birth. And it's a very Christian idea in terms of the first sin. So the first sin, a person comes into the world as a sinner. and by baptizing the baby, the sins are taken away and carried by Jesus Christ, right? Okay, so that's the idea, and that's also where Thomas Hobbes comes. It says a person is a sinner, it's bad, it has an ego, it's egotistical, and it always seeks its own preservation over others. So it will, if necessary, they will hurt another person. So this idea um, comes, and then comes the social contract idea. Thomas Hobbes says it would be best on the world to prevent the state of nature, the bad nature of a human being, of a person, of a dictator, for example. It would be best if the people in a country make a contract with the state. And that contract means that the government should only protect its own citizens and not hurt its own citizens. And when the people don't want it anymore, they can send the government away. So this is all, theoretical discussions and debates, because there's also the Lockean, John Locke version, which is a little bit more liberal view. And I would consider Thomas Hobbes as a conservative because he was a religious person, and he was a proponent of monarchy, and in that sense, he believed that the Leviathan, which was a monster, and the monster would eventually eat up the individual, and the individual would become a socialized citizen, a subject of the contract, social contract. So in a way, the person would get protection, and the government or the monarchy would be able to continue to rule. So that would be a contract. So justice is an important concept, and actually justice seems very universal. Every single individual, universal means that every single individual wants justice. I mean, if injustice is done to you, you would seek justice. You would want justice. So, and every government professes devotion to justice. And how do you maintain or administer justice? So every government has institutions built in, established for judicial proceedings to protect the people. And this is a concept which is very, very important in political sciences. Equality, justice, freedom, these are very important concepts. And they need to be addressed, and they need to be ensured. And so in a way, you could summarize justice as whatever is due to everyone. So whatever you deserve, whatever you have done, you will receive. So if you do bad, you will be punished. If you do good, you will be rewarded, right? So that's the logic of justice. So if you hurt someone, you will get hurt by the existing judicial authorities like lawyers and the courts and the judges, by law. Let me see. So every government strives for justice, for a just and fair society. And Colander says, even though all governments, all states want to ensure justice, even though they say profess justice, it's not always the case. And because it's not that easy. You know, what makes it very complicated is, imagine a government, even though it's a democratic government, there are companies, there are corporations, there are those elite, economic elite, and you have political elite. Political elite would be those who rule, right, in the government, in political parties, etc. And then you have the economic elite, the rich, the wealthy. You could say the old aristocrats, but today the new merchants, the capitalists. And for example, in the United States, Republicans or Democrats, they get sponsorship, they get money from millions and millions from corporate world, from economic elite. So I mean, it's almost impossible for a person on the street who doesn't have a job, who's homeless, to think, well, I don't get my share because there is no equality, there is no justice. I mean, so when Colander says it is quite possible that the government says, well, we are just a justice community, society, we have laws, but how do you ensure? How do you know? I mean, um, so the question is, why aren't there policies to take care of those who are homeless, who don't have a home? I mean, what happened to equality? What happened to freedom? What happened to equal opportunities, education, housing, employment? Big questions. I mean, and then comes morality, right? So, is it enough to have policies? And then you have a big discussion between conservatives, libertarians, liberals, Democrats, reactionaries, radicals, communists, neoliberals, neorealists, in on those questions. I mean, what do you do? How do you tackle? And this is your arena, and this is in the next years you will be discussing all these um, concepts. And the thing is that we don't agree with each other most of the time on how to tackle these issues and problems. I mean, do you look at it from a religious perspective? For example, conservatives are people, they come from religious, traditional ideas, whereas liberals, they think in terms of freedoms and equality and free elections and democratic institutional prerogatives. So this is going to be a very interesting time future for you as a political scientist to talk and discuss all of these elements. As a government, there is also this concept of safeguarding individual freedoms. But again, um, when do you know that a government really safeguards the individual freedoms? When do you know that a government is not under influence of internal or external forces or corporate world who bind themselves into the political world? I mean, this happens, and this is not something. This is a big discussion. So faith in government as the defender of individual freedoms has developed slowly. So we have been fighting for our individual freedoms over the centuries until now. In modern democracies, there is a trend to look toward government for protection. Action against monopolies, corrupt political practices, because there is corruption, right? So we know that. And discrimination against ethnic minorities and women, for example. But sometimes government regulations unjustly or needlessly restrict personal freedom, right? It's not always infinite freedom, but the government also restricts freedom. And there is always the danger that government may fall under the influence of special interests and fail to reflect the will of the majority. So how do we know this? These are very crucial points for you to think about. Um, Let me see. So we will continue 5 more minutes and then we will stop. And next time we see each other, we will continue from this point on. Regulating businesses and individuals' actions. Some of these institutions and groups provide important social services, but often they pursue selfish interests. So how do you know that a politician serves the common will, the general interests of the public, of the citizens, and not their own selfish interests? For example, Plato, if you read Plato, Plato would say, you might remember from literature the distinction made. He says that gold are those. He makes gold, iron, and the material structure. So gold would be. Yes, Serdar, please send me your essay through by mail, by my email. and gold would be those who are wise, and iron would be those normal people, citizens, and then you have the lower value. For example, those who are involved in worldly business, merchant system, capitalist. They should not be allowed to do politics. They should only buy and sell, and only the wise people who don't have worldly interest should rule. For example, this idea is very Platonic, and so that's why we have this. Anyone today, even though it's a democratic system, democratic institution, anyone can be elected as a ruler, but you never know whether they are there for their own selfish interest or for the interest of the people. So this keeps on popping up in literature, in theory, in philosophy, and then there is the promoting of general welfare. As I said, government provides the the structure, so the distribution of resources, power, within which economic and social interaction is process, right, can take place. It regulates the economy, structural economy, taxes against structure, prohibits, protects, and provides services to benefit individuals, groups, and the whole of society. Whether we think about it or not, every person every day is affected by the demands of government and by the benefits it provides. So this again is a discussion, is a debate, a political debate. How do you find the balance? When is regulation good? When is regulation not good? For example, when are taxes good and when are taxes not good? Remember the Soviet Union? There was no taxation, and when Boris Yeltsin came, they were not able to collect taxes, so they set 13% taxation to everything, to everyone. And I mean, it's not. We know from political sciences, from social sciences, it's not good for a state if a state cannot collect taxes. So it's not a very strong state; it's a weak state. And but when do you know that collecting taxes is good for everyone? When it's progressive. So you take more taxes from the rich and less taxes from those who cannot pay taxes. But if you put more taxes on the poor and you reduce taxes for the rich, I mean it's not going to work, is it? It does sometimes happen. So as a political scientist, these are points that you will be discussing and dealing with. So let's take one more, and this is the political theory and government. This is where we will stop. There are three views of the nature of government. One, government as a necessary evil, a government as a positive good, and government as an unnecessary evil. We will get into these individually, and we will also take a look at liberals, conservatives, libertarians, conservatives, radicals, reactionaries, etc. in the next week. And next week will be week 13. And week 14, we will summarize everything again. So week 13, so we will be rounding off our lectures and two more lectures. Please don't forget to send me your essays and make sure that there is no copy paste. Please write your essays yourself. Even though you think it doesn't sound good, I am going to take a look at the idea and I'm not going to punish you for language. Please make sure that you write yourself. I appreciate you writing it yourself. Rather, if the department checks for plagiarism, please don't fall into that trap. It might have consequences for your grades. Okay, guys, thank you for listening again to me, and all the love from the Netherlands. Okay, take care of yourself. Bye bye, guys.